Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Desiree Cassell. I'm an orthopedic and pelvic floor physical therapist specializing in women's health, aka pelvic floor. I'm a wife, mom of 3, foodie, lover of all things movement and nature, and I'm super passionate about educating, empowering, and supporting other women like you to find and maintain balance throughout all aspects of their lives, without pain, pressure, or peeing their pants. And this is the Balanced Momtality Podcast, where we will talk about all things pelvic floor, your core, and optimizing your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery, providing you with the knowledge and tools so that you can feel like the strong, playful, and happy mom that you and your family deserve. Now let's get you out of those pads and back to loving movement. Fill up your water, pop in those AirPods, roll out your mat, and let's connect. Hey friend, it's your host, Dr. Des, and thanks for showing up here for another episode on the Pelvic Floor Core and More show. This episode's coming out a little late. I feel like I'm saying that all the time these days, and it's because it's Maycember, like obviously. I love having moms and women be my main audience because you guys get me. So hopefully you are not freaking out that this episode's coming out a little late. It is what it is. Better late than never, right? We are showing up. We are not trying to be perfect, but we are trying to show up and be consistent. So this week is testing me in all of that because my husband is out of town. So I get to single parent for the next few days and I'm not used to it. So we are definitely learning and growing and a little overwhelmed. And so we are giving ourselves grace. We're not trying to show up as perfect as possible, just trying to show up. And with that being said, I'm so glad you showed up and that you're here. And I hope that you find today's episode helpful. It's really going to be helpful for anyone dealing with core dysfunction, whether it is diastasis recti, or maybe you had a hernia, or you just have a weak core. Maybe you have some leaking and pelvic floor symptoms, back pain. These strategies that we're going to talk about today really just help optimize the core, but we're really talking about it in terms of diastasis recti because I really see these things not happen in the standard practice of rehab for core strengthening, and really they should. So especially if you've been doing all the core exercises for your diastasis recti, but your core's still feeling weak, or you're seeing some doming or bulging or even a hernia, or you're just feeling disconnected, you may be missing some of these really important pieces. And so most of the people who have diastasis, or maybe you're pregnant and you just want to avoid diastasis, right? You're starting to look into this and you're noticing like, wait, so what even is this diastasis recti, diastasis recti, DRA? People call it a lot of different things, like to pronounce it differently, but it's all the same thing. And we're going to go into what it is in a second, but most of the people start to get awareness of the reality that coning is something we want to avoid, but maybe they're also feeling bloated, or they have instability or back pain, or again, you just feel like you have like a mom pooch, right? Like that mom pooch just isn't going away no matter what you're doing. You're eating really healthy and the belly is just still hanging out. Or another term is like bread loafing. It looks like your abs are like a loaf of bread, just distended. And maybe you also just feel like you have difficulty engaging your core. Then all of these strategies are going to be really, really helpful for you because most of you have already thought of the strengthening piece, right? Like, oh, I need to do more core exercises. So you Google it, you YouTube it, you show up on Instagram, you're trying to follow all the latest influencers' core workouts and ab workouts and Kegels and who knows what else out there you guys are trying these days. But there are some things that are really getting missed. And so we're going to go over that today to really help bring that full big picture to you so that you don't have those missing gaps. And obviously, if you're trying to troubleshoot this at home, even trying these strategies and you're still not seeing success, that's when it's time to reach out, get on a one-on-one coaching call with me, come see me in person if you need to, and we can really get a sense of what your body's doing, why those strategies aren't working, and what else you might be missing so that we make sure you are seeing progress and you're feeling successful. Because there's nothing more frustrating than putting in the work and not seeing success, right? Even more frustrating is when you're putting in that work, you're not only not seeing progress, but maybe you even made things worse. And unfortunately, this was my story, friends. If you've been around for the ride on this podcast for a while, you might already know some of this story, but my story begins back when I was 20 and I had my first baby. And obviously I had no idea any of this knowledge and information that I do now. And so I just thought I need to get back my core strong, right? I had a diastasis throughout that first pregnancy, which let me clarify really quick. 100% of pregnant women do get a diastasis recti. And essentially that's because baby is growing, right? Because a diastasis recti is essentially just the separation of the connective tissue between our abdominal muscles. So it's called the linea alba. It's a thick piece of connective tissue that runs from the sternum down to the pubic bone, and it creates a connection for the abdominal wall, fascial layers, and when we get pregnant, that connective tissue thins and stretches out, and so that is normal. That happens to everybody. It is very common, but it is also normal. However, when it becomes abnormal and still common, but not normal anymore, is when it's not symmetrical. So maybe during pregnancy, you're noticing that it's creating like a diamond shape, or you just have one bulging circle in the center of your belly, around your belly button or right above it, or it's you're postpartum, you're at that 6 to 8 week mark and you're still seeing that doming and coning and gapping in your belly and it's not coming back together. That's when we want to really get some help with understanding why it's there, why it didn't heal well, why it didn't open symmetrically, because that's where we can get too much pulling and thinning in one spot of that linea alba connective tissue that makes it really difficult for that connection to come back together, or maybe even you did, like me, create a hernia. Because in my early pregnancy, that first pregnancy, about halfway through, I'll never forget the day I was showering and I was leaning back, rinsing my head in the water, and I looked down and it just looked like an alien was coming out of my gut. Like I was like, what is this bulging, terrifying thing coming out of my stomach? And then I realized, did some research, knew diastasis recti was a thing, didn't know there was things during pregnancy I could have done to prevent that from becoming a hernia or getting worse. I just thought this is part of it, as we get told, right? But postpartum, knowing I had that and having had a pregnancy and wanting to get strong and feel good in my body again, like we all do, I also made the mistake of jumping into exercise too soon. And I also got into, even at 4 months postpartum, which I didn't think was too soon, but I got into too intensive core moves too soon. So I signed up for a Pilates class at UNM at the college I was going to, because I had my daughter as a sophomore in college. So I was still taking classes, never took a break from having her. So I did a whole semester online, and then I went in when she was 4 months and I was taking classes in person, and one of them was a Pilates class, and I thought this will be perfect. Pilates is all about core. I'll get my core stronger. The instructor, I told him, like, I just had a baby, so I probably can't do everything that I want, right? And he's like, just do what you can. There was no guidance on like, don't do this exercise, or if you see this, then it's too much, right? Or do you even know how to engage your core? Because this is something we don't get taught. We just get told, engage your core, right? Engage, hold, make your core hard. What does that mean? And it means something different to so many women. And unfortunately, it can be the reason we see a lot of problems. So I went through that class, engaging my core, not correctly, might I add, going through these hard exercises that I even modified myself because I couldn't do it, and they still weren't good for my body. Looking back, I cringe at how many moves and how many days and weeks and months I was strengthening my body and actually causing a hernia, causing more imbalance in my system, and therefore never feeling strong from the exercises I was doing. So you're going to do better than me, and you're going to understand what is happening, and you're going to come get help if you're seeing issues, okay? But when it comes to diastasis recti, everyone's really concerned about the gap, which is the distance between those abdominal muscles, right? So some people, when we test this, we're sticking our fingers in that hole, in that gap. So you might get told you have a 2-finger separation or you have a 3-finger separation. But I do want to emphasize that healing the DRA is not just about gap width. Many times it's actually more about the tension beneath. So how soft and squishy is it? Do your fingers hit a wall at the tip of them, or is it just endlessly squishy when you put your fingers in that gap? Because it's more important to have a strong, functional core that can manage pressure than it is to have a gap close, because maybe that gap closes, but you still don't have the function and strength to support your body. Versus I have a lot of women that have like a 2 or 3 finger gap, but they have a freaking strong core and they can do whatever they want, and that's not going to get worse because they know their body boundaries. And sometimes we do get those 3 and 4 finger gap DRAs to come back together, but I really like to get people out of the mindset of just the gap, because you can still have a really strong functional core with a little bit of a gap, and it's really more about what is happening beneath that gap. And strengthening alone is not enough, right? Because we already know there's a lot of core exercises out there, and I can do an episode just on that another time. And you can always YouTube and Google, as you did before, core exercises for DRA. But yes, do you know how to do them appropriately? Do you know how to engage the core and breathe through the core appropriately through those exercises? That is what I challenge you. And if you're not sure, get on a coaching call with me, because I can watch and see and be able to help guide you so that you know if you are or not. Because everyone is really just trying to get in more core. I'm postpartum. Let's get my core stronger. Like I did, joining a Pilates class. So they're doing these random crunches, random core activation drills. They're probably over bracing, doing some Kegels, getting into that aggressive core work too soon like me. And the body is a system. Even if you're doing the core strengthening well and appropriately, meaning you are bracing right, you're progressing at an optimal appropriate rate, then you can still have dysfunction, because the abdominals being strong is only a piece of the puzzle. Remember, your body is a system, and the core, specifically the abdominals, are just a piece of that core system. So it is really about getting that whole system to work together and manage pressure well. Just like with prolapse and leaking and all of the other things, we want to manage pressure well and make sure that system is working together well. But aside from that, I don't want to get lost on a tangent. So we are going to talk about what is missing. What can we do aside from strengthening that can really help build that big kinetic chain where those forces are being managed well, and we don't have pressure being shoved into that linea alba and creating a permanent dysfunction. So this is in no order, but we're going to go over the first missing piece here, and that is fascial and soft tissue mobility. So again, we're not just doing exercises, and we're not even just doing breath work. We really need to get our hands on the tissues, because especially during pregnancy and postpartum, there's a big change in that fascial system. So the abdominal wall ends up getting really stretched out, which is why we're talking diastasis, obviously, right? But that also means that your sides also stretch out, and in response to the front of the abdominal wall stretching, your sides can actually get pretty tight. And then postpartum, when that abdominal wall is weak, something's got to hold you together, so the sides tend to grip, and sometimes the upper abs also tend to grip. And so if we have tension and pulling from our sides and in our abs, that's just going to yank on that connective tissue and prevent it from getting better. So we really want to look at your trunk, look at the sides of your core, your back, your abdomen, especially if you had a C-section or any tearing. We want to do some scar mobility, and we want to work and make sure there's no restrictions pulling that center space apart. So fascial stiffness and gripping patterns can really cause that pressure to be shoved in places that we don't want. And this can also affect the generation of tissue. Like your tissues don't have the ability, the cells don't have the ability to lay down new tissue and heal tighter when they're being yanked apart and they're not getting good circulation. The mobility of the abs and the fascia need to be optimal for the body to feel safe enough to let go of the guarding and also allow that healing to happen. Because again, if we are stressed, the body's holding tension, your body isn't releasing healing signals, and so we're not going to heal. We're going to live under a state of stress where then the tissue literally starts to degrade and become thin and fragile and stiff versus being a tissue that gets a lot of circulation and is flexible and strong and adaptable to what you're doing. And so thinking about soft tissue work so that we also have good spinal mobility, it affects our breathing because our diaphragm can have a hard time engaging if our fascial tissue is restrictive along our sides and even along our diaphragm and abdomen. So getting that soft tissue work can really help, all with mobility and with strengthening. That core activation comes in so much more when there's not tissue that's being tugged and pulled in all these different directions. So getting your hands on, doing some scar massage, gentle abdominal massage, but even getting into the mid-back, the rib cage, thoracic, fascial mobility release, hip flexor release, using a lacrosse ball. These are all some of my favorite strategies to really help the soft tissue when we're talking diastasis. And again, these are all things that we can individualize and prioritize for you in a one-on-one coaching session. But a core that can't move well often can't function well either, right? So we need to get our hands on the tissues, whether it's cupping, skin rolling, scar massage, lacrosse ball. Start feeling around. If anything's tender, it needs to be rubbed out, but be gentle. We're not overdoing it and causing more tension and tenderness. But the missing piece number 2, you knew I was going to say it, is breath work. And I already said, yes, we're doing a little breathing, right, when we're talking about pressure management, but it does really get missed because we're not just belly breathing. Because again, remember, if we have a gap in that abdominal wall and we're thinking, oh yeah, I just need to do some breath work. What do people hear when they think breath work? They think big breaths, right? So I'm going to take a big breath, and if it gets into my belly, that's a good sign. It means I took a big breath, which yes, it means you did use your diaphragm to take a good breath. Good job. But why would we want the pressure of that breath to go into the belly where it's already stretched out? So again, we need to manage that pressure. So instead, we want to use that breath to go where it doesn't want to go. We want to get it into the back, into the sides, and into your pelvic floor, because that is typically where you're tight, and again, where it could be holding and pulling on that diastasis recti tissue. So the breath work is going to help balance that core and open up tight muscles. But then again, this really is where we get the pressure management and also where we strengthen, because when we're breathing well, we are strengthening our core when we're breathing, especially when we're braced, because again, it's not just about doing core work and exercise, it's how you're doing those core exercises. And if you're not breathing deep in your core and you're not using that deep 360 core breath throughout your bracing and exercises, you're really missing it, friend. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, reach out so we can help you understand, because this is the key. This is the coordination, this is the pressure management, this is the softening, this is the strengthening, this is the healing, this is the restoring, okay? So the breath work is huge. And when we do a shallow chest breath, it makes it so that we're getting pressure where we don't want. We're getting a lot of tension in the shoulders and neck. We're getting a lot less expansion where things should be expanding. And so we want to make sure we're not shallow chest breathing. We also need to make sure we're not holding your breath during exercise, okay? But if we are not breathing well, this also creates restriction in our rib cage. And again, the core works together through the whole body. And when the rib cage is stiff, more forces get put into the pelvic floor and low back space and hips. And so we need to make sure that that breath is getting into the ribs. And yeah, we do want to fill the pelvic bowl, the back, your sides, your belly, but we still need to feel that rib cage expansion, okay? So make sure you are feeling that breath fill from the bottom up, and it is coming into the rib cage, and you're feeling those ribs expand open like a bucket handle on your inhale, and on your exhale, those ribs are coming back down and in. So 360 breathing is the goal. We are inhaling and relaxing everything. And if you're braced and you're doing a moment of effort, you want to start thinking exhale with effort, okay? So making sure that we're coordinating our breath with our movements and exercise is also crucial, because if you're breathing well at rest, but then you go to do an exercise and all of a sudden you're shallow breathing or holding your breath, then again, we're still going to end up with pressure being shoved where we don't want it to go. And then 2, think about how you're stacking your rib cage over your pelvis, because obviously that's going to impact how well your diaphragm can engage and how well your abs can engage during that exercise. So being aware of your posture and breathing is huge. Your breath is your foundation for your core function. The last piece here, and obviously this isn't the only piece that sometimes gets missed, but these are the 3 most common things that I see. And the final piece is rib cage and thoracic mobility. So I talked about how those forces need to work their way all the way up the chain. And if your rib cage is super stiff, again, those forces are being shoved up into your neck and shoulder. They're being shoved down into your hips and low back and pelvic floor. And this can really cause a lot of problems. But a stiff rib cage is really common, especially during pregnancy and postpartum, because during pregnancy, your rib cage is flaring and opening up to make room for baby, which then does decrease that thoracic mobility, and it makes posture a little harder, it makes breathing a little harder, but it does really shift the pressure. But if your ribs stay mobile, we can really counteract a lot of that tension and where those forces go. Whereas when they stay stiff and flared, then your core really struggles to generate the tension properly throughout all of your movements. And then again, you're not getting the big bang for your buck. So what do I love to do for thoracic mobility? I'm so glad you asked. Obviously, there's great yoga poses like cat-cow where we get some flexion and extension, but I'll tell you that the rib cage and thorax really love rotation. So this is where I love to talk bow and arrow. You're lying on your side, your hands are stretched out in front of you. You're using that top hand to pull back like you're pulling back a bow. You're keeping your legs stacked and you're just rotating open. The other one is open books. So obviously too, you can always Google these, YouTube these. Open books are amazing. Any kind of thoracic rotation, literally sitting in a chair and twisting and looking over one shoulder. Side breathing, getting that expansion into the rib cage, opening that bucket handle motion like we were talking about, and even using a foam roller or lacrosse ball and massage guns to help open up the joints and soft tissue there to make sure that the ribs can move, because sometimes things are so stiff from the fascia and the soft tissue and muscles that the joints can't move very much. And that's why we need both soft tissue work and the mobility work. And when we add the breath work in, that's chef's kiss. It all just comes together. But your ribs are part of your core system too, okay? So we can't forget that piece. It is all connected, and we really need to get it all working together. So what does healing actually look like? It's not just the smaller gap, right? But it's really looking at getting improved tension through your abdominal wall, less doming and coning, having stronger stability and control through your movements, feeling less pressure into your abs, into the pelvic floor. You're able to do more, take care of yourself better. You have confidence lifting and moving. You're not leaking. These are all signs that you're healing. And really, this isn't all that matters, right? There are a lot of things. It's a big picture. So just keep an eye on some other things as well, like your sleep, your stress, how consistent you're being. Are you progressively overloading those exercises? And are you also looking at your pelvic floor and coordination? Because that can also be something that people miss, especially if they had a C-section. They just think, my pelvic floor is fine. I just need to get in some core work and I'm good. I need to deal with this DRA. Remember, DRA is a core dysfunction. Pelvic floor is part of the core. So we're not forgetting that. Some things to avoid. We're not getting back into aggressive ab work too early like I did, okay? So even if it's a year out, you might still be in a space where it's too much, because if you're not slowly getting yourself into those moves and you're just going straight back into leg lifts and V-sits and all of these hardcore exercises, you can cause issues. So it's not just about getting into aggressive ab work too early. It's about getting into aggressive ab work and not having prepared and worked yourself up to that point. Other issues are just sucking in your gut constantly and over gripping. So again, ab gripping can be a big cause of why that diastasis doesn't come together well. And this can also be not just sucking in, but bracing. Maybe you're even bracing well, but you're doing it all day. That is not ideal. We're not trying to brace and hold all day. We're really trying to brace and hold through moments of effort. And again, we're allowing that ebb and flow with our breath. But when we're at rest, we are relaxed. We are not holding on. And then we also just don't want to compare, because obviously with social media out there, it's so easy to compare and get distraught and frustrated that your gut isn't recovering like someone else's, but you don't know someone else's story. You don't know their connective tissue. You don't know if they've had all the support in the world, right? Like, we can't compare to others. Stay in your own lane. Just take it one step at a time, and definitely reach out to me so that we can get you on a coaching call and make sure you have a plan moving forward that you feel confident in. Or join my 12-week on-demand restore program, because we do a lot of this work in there. And this is exactly why inside Restore, we focus on mobility, on breath work, on strength, and pressure management together, not separately and not just random exercises. Your core isn't just weak. It may need better mobility, pressure management, and coordination. And I'm here to help if you have any questions. But otherwise, friends, I hope this episode was helpful for you. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. And I can't wait to see you here next time on the Pelvic Floor Core and More show. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you've got so many other important things going on, but I hope it was helpful and you leave here with some tools to help you in your healing journey. And I just want to ask you, if you have found this helpful, to please leave a review on iTunes. Scroll down to the bottom of my podcast page and leave that 5-star review so it can help other women see this information. And also, if you want to be a part of my community of amazing women trying to balance all the things, great tips and insight and sharing stories and just motivating each other along the way, feel free to join my Facebook group, The Balanced Momtality, Wellness and Support. I hope to see you here next time on the Balanced Momtality Podcast.